Friday, July 15th, 2016. Maneko64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I'd like to talk about an interesting interview Jim Rickards did with Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert yesterday on the Keiser Report. Stacy Herbert starts off asking, if the financial system and the banking system would be better off, and the economy for that matter, if Jamie Dimon was locked up in the Tower of London, which is right behind her studio. And this is what Jim Rickards said, and I quote him: "JP Morgan is one of the great criminal enterprises of all time." And he said that he went on to say that they've pleaded guilty for many crimes, but they've gotten away with it because they've paid huge, monetary fines. So crime pays in this case. He also said that in relationship to Jamie Dimon's, stewardship of JP Morgan and all the big profits, he said even a trained monkey could do as well as Jamie Dimon, basically because, he can borrow money for no cost at zero rate. He's got an implied government guarantee, and he can use unlimited derivatives to leverage all these, speculative operations that they can do with free money. So that's what he thinks of JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon. This is Jim Rickards, not me. And he blames GlassSteagall, the fact that GlassSteagall was repealed in 1999 for the financial crisis, because GlassSteagall was implemented in 1934 in response to the crisis in the great stock market crash in 1929 and the big financial boom in the 20s. During that time, commercial banks and investment banks were doing business, basically banks were doing both investment banking and commercial banking. So they were taking, customers' money as deposit and taking that money and securitizing it into loans, and then dumping those securitized loans to their own clients. And it was a big, disaster. And I think Goldman Sachs was involved in these schemes in the 1920s. So the U.S. Congress passed Glass-Steagall in 1934, and commercial banking and investment banking were separated. So you could take deposits and make loans as a commercial bank, or you could, be an investment bank and underwrite securities, but you couldn't do both, and that kept the system fairly stable financial system until 1999, when it was repealed by both political parties. Bill Clinton and the Republican Congress signed it into law. So it was both parties that really were the culprits. And there were bank failures, of course, from 1934 to 1999, but nothing like we saw in 2008, 2007, 2008. Nothing like that. And basically, Jim Rickards thinks that we need to break up the banks. We need to ban most derivatives. And I think he didn't mention it specifically, but I would say that he means the OTC derivatives. Those are the dangerous ones. They're very opaque, very not transparent at all, and the banks just use that to rip off their clients. Those are his words, not mine. But I know about that as well, because I've worked in derivatives, in the exchange-traded derivatives, which are completely different. They're traded on an exchange, and the contracts are specified, and data is published daily. He goes on to say, though, that the other point he makes is that Glass-Steagall needs to be put back in place. And Stacy says, so why can't we do that? And he says, basically, the politicians in Washington and in London are in the pockets of the bankers. And he goes on to say he was at the U.S. Treasury doing a private briefing on risk, And in the middle of his briefing, he told the senior official that was present, and I quote, "I do not envy your job because the banks own this town." And he thought the treasury official would be offended. And the guy actually said, "No, Jim, you're right. We can't do anything, here on independently. We have to defer to the Fed," which is basically the banks. So there you have it, in the pockets of the bankers. And that's why nothing's been fixed. I've made a video before about this, and talking about Mervyn King, the former governor of the Bank of England. And towards the end of the book, there's a part of it where he says, and I quote, "50 years from now, will our grandchildren ask why we lack the courage to put in place reforms to stop a crisis happening again? I hope not. Events drive ideas, and the experience of crisis is driving economists to develop new ideas about how our economies work. They will be needed to overcome the power of vested interests and lobby groups." Well, that's just a euphemism by Mervyn King being diplomatic in his book, saying, unfortunately, the bankers still own the politicians. And with that in mind, I go to another story that came out Monday on the 11th of July, while George Osborne was still Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is like the Treasury Secretary job in the UK. And the story came out in all the main newspapers, but it wasn't really too much talked about. And it says, HSBC, this is from The Guardian, HSBC escaped U.S. money laundering charges after Osborne's intervention. So he basically, the U.S. House has published these papers saying that George Osborne, sent emails to Ben Bernanke of the Fed and the U.S. Treasury, and urging them, and the Department of Justice in the U.S., urging them not to prosecute HSBC. So there you go. George Osborne was in the pocket of the bankers. And the interesting thing is that 2 days later, he was sacked as Chancellor of the Exchequer by the newly minted Prime Minister, Theresa May. We'll have to see if the new Chancellor of the Exchequer is going to be in the pockets of the bankers. I think he will. The guy's name is Philip Hammond. I doubt he will not be in the pockets of the bankers. For those of you, who think that the system has been fixed and the financial system is stable, it's not, and this is not some crazy idea coming just from me. It's from Jim Rickards. It's from Mervyn King, former head of the Bank of England during the crisis from 2003 to 2013. And he was the head economist 10 years before. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.